So we have. Okay. All right.
Right, recording
so
started.
Tell me when you're recording.
We're good now.
We are?
Yep.
Okay. All right, it's time to call the Conservation Commission meeting to order for the city of Torrington for Thursday, August 31st, 2023 at 6:37 p.m. And present is Karen Svets, Stephen Ivane, Michael Kaneb remotely, staff member Nate Nardi Cyrus, guest Julia Rogers from the Housatonic Valley Association, and myself, Christine Altman. First order of business is the July 27th, 2023 regular meeting minutes.
And I have a copy of that if people need it.
Okay. Can we have a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
Second? Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. All right, new business. We have a presentation by Julia Rogers, Senior Land Protection Manager for the Housatonic Valley Association.
Excellent. Do I need to speak into the mic so they can hear me?
Yeah.
Online.
Uh,
Okay,
Oh, and Aaron Stelma just arrived.
excellent. Perfect. And can you guys see my presentation on your screens?
Follow the
Whoa.
forest?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are very high tech around here. This
This
is
is great.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. So my name is Julia Rogers. I'm the Senior Land Protection Manager for the Housatonic Valley Association. And as Nate mentioned earlier, he and I worked together in his previous life. And so he and I have been in touch. And I thought you all might be excited to hear about some of this work we're doing with Follow the Forest. So Nate, you can go to the next slide,
Sure.
I think. Yeah. So I always like to start my presentations just by talking a little bit about the Housatonic Valley Association and what we do. So we are a watershed organization and land trust working to protect the environmental health and quality of the entire Housatonic watershed. So the city of Torrington's partially in the Housatonic watershed and partially in the Farmington River watershed. And so all of our work encompasses both thinking about water quality and also thinking about land conservation and how those two interrelate. So my work focuses on the land conservation side of things, and with our work doing the Follow the Forest initiative. Nate, you can go to the next. So Follow the Forest is this big idea that we can protect and connect this forested wildlife corridor that starts essentially where the Appalachian Trail crosses the Hudson River and extends north through where we're sitting in the city of Torrington, through Western Massachusetts, Vermont, all the way to Canada. So the map that you're seeing is showing this big corridor of green because we're a watershed organization and this already bleeds larger than our watershed. We drew our boundaries to the east and west by two large rivers. So we have the Hudson River on one side drawing a large boundary and the Connecticut River on the other. It's not to say there's not important forest on either side of those. We just had to sort of limit our imagination at some point. Next slide, Nate. So in order to do this work, it's a huge vision, right? That we can protect and connect this forested corridor. And we do this by working with partners in all 4 of the states that the corridors connect. So that's land trusts, municipalities, other conservation organizations, and individual landowners. We work with folks to think about strategic conservation planning. So taking this big vision and really drilling down to the local level to understand what it means on the individual landscape and how we can carry out that vision locally. We also work with community scientists to really fine tune the connectivity data that we have on the landscape. So we're partially trying to protect large blocks of interior forest, but we also want to make sure they stay interconnected. And so I'll get into all of that a little bit more. But ultimately, all of this is underlaid by some of the most recent and up-to-date science, including work by the Nature Conservancy and also the University of Massachusetts and UConn. Next slide, Nate. So when we think about large blocks of forest, we talk about core forests. So the depiction on your screen is sort of showing this concept of a core forest. So we're talking about interior forests. So we've removed 300 feet of edge forest. Essentially, if a road or a house or another human-made feature fragments the forest, that 300 feet of edge forest is of a different makeup than the interior forest. And interior forests are becoming more and more rare on our landscape because we all like to live in the forest too. So protecting those interior forests is really critical when we think about forest ecosystem functioning, when we think about species that require interior forest as part of their life cycle, and also as we think about the pressures from invasive plant species and other pressures. So when we're talking about large blocks of forest, we're talking about 250 acres of contiguous interior forest. So that big green map you saw at the beginning, those were all of the core forests throughout this landscape. Next slide, Nate. I can't actually see my slides.
Yeah.
No, it's okay. I mainly know my presentation, so it's fine. So the next piece is really identifying these connections. So the concept is using aerial imagery and GIS mapping. It's pretty simple to line up where the core forests are. We use the National Land Cover data set. It gets updated every few years, and it's pretty good, although at a coarse resolution. Identifying the connections is a lot more challenging because there's a lot of features on our landscape that we don't have mapping data for at a really regional scale. So scientists have done an excellent job of drawing models and starting to understand where the big corridors might be, so where these connectivity points are. But we don't have information on things like fences and guardrails and even some of the steep embankments or retaining walls that are going to shift or impede wildlife movement and really impact connectivity on our landscape. Next slide. So we have taken this connectivity modeling that scientists have done, and we've drawn circles on the map where they overlap with roads to say, we need more information to really understand what the connectivity looks like on the local landscape within each of these circles, and maybe some other circles, because all of the folks who live in communities have a far better understanding of the communities than we can ever get from scientific modeling. The modeling is critical, but the local knowledge interconnected with that scientific modeling just takes all of this information to the next level. So we're asking community scientists to go out and really assess these, what we call wildlife linkages, to understand connectivity on the ground. Next slide. So we tried to make this exercise pretty simple. The idea being we want college students and high school students to be able to go out and do this, as well as any other interested volunteer. And so we asked for some really simple characteristics of these areas. We ask about traffic conditions, because that tends to be sort of the #1 impediment for wildlife movement. We also ask about habitat types that are on either side of the road, because these are going to give us a good understanding of what species might be trying to move throughout these landscapes. And then we ask about those barriers that I mentioned earlier. Ultimately, we ask volunteers to give us a categorical rating of the linkage on a scale from excellent to poor, so that I can look at the data sort of in a cursory fashion and group everything and understand where this fits. What's interesting, we're now over 235 linkages assessed throughout this landscape. And that data, even though it's a little bit subjective, right? My excellent might be different than your excellent. It plays out the way you expect it to on the landscape. Because the other really critical piece is people are thinking about this from their community level, and that's really what we want. I know that the worst linkages on this landscape are like Interstate 84 and Interstate 90, but I want to understand within the city of Torrington, how do your different linkages compare? Because that's more often than not going to be where the solutions are found, are at these really local levels. Next slide. So like I said, we've tried to make this an exercise that we can do with folks of all ages. So we've taken kids, students out, starting as young as middle school and going up through high school to get them out, really thinking about, a lot of these students see wildlife on their way to school in their backyards. And when you get them thinking about how and why the wildlife are moving, they get really animated. And it's a lot of fun to help them draw those connections. Next slide. But one of the things I get whenever I do this is they look at me and they say, but Julia, I see black bear, I see deer, they move all the time. Why does this matter? And so really quickly, I want to give you two examples of two species that I like to think about when I think about connectivity and why it matters even for these species like black bear that we see all the time. And to sort of take a step back, my background is largely in forest ecology and plants. So this has also been really fun for me to dive more into wildlife biology and understand more about these species that we know are on our landscape. So the black bear is an excellent one to think about. They're really critical, particularly in decomposition in our forest as they dig around for grubs and also for seed dispersal. Next slide, Nate. And they move a lot throughout our landscape. So you all probably recognize this picture. This is from a bear in Winchester trying to cross the road. I think she had 4 cubs. This is one of my favorite examples of like wildlife struggling to move across our roads. But what's also interesting is they've done a number of scientific studies on bears, and they found that particularly mama bears with cubs exhibit a stress response when they get near roads. So they put heart rate monitors on bears, and they found an abnormal increase in heart rate near roads. And they found that these bears will often wait to cross the roads till our roads are quieter. So, early in the morning when the traffic has subsided and before it picks up again. That's a really common trait of a lot of particularly larger species. What they also find is there's an increase in wildlife vehicle collisions when we change our time change for daylight savings time, because suddenly our habits have changed and we didn't clue off the wildlife that that's what was happening. So it's an interesting example to say, we see these bears all the time. They are still impacted by, and that's not even to get into, how they're impacted by trash management and all of the other things we can associate with bears. But I think it's really interesting to think of them as one of those species we see a lot that are still impacted by our roads. Next slide. And my next favorite example are the amphibians, the salamanders and frogs and other critters that are our best example of a large migration. So I'm going to guess that most of you know about Big Night, but I'll take a moment to explain it. So late winter, early spring every year, the amphibians migrate from their winter hibernation grounds to their spring breeding grounds or vernal pools. And this happens generally on over a series of nights. It has to be above 40 degrees and raining. And these salamanders are out and about. More often than not, these two areas are divided by roads. So volunteers will go out, perhaps you guys do this, and help the amphibians to cross the road. In the Hudson Valley in New York, they've been collecting data on big nights, as they're referred to. And what you can see up on the screen is the data from 2019. What's really interesting is that in 2020, during the COVID pandemic, when we were all in lockdown, some volunteers still went out. Of course, the numbers were less than in 2019 because there were less volunteers out, but the proportion of dead salamanders and frogs was far less because there were less cars on the road. So to me, this is a fantastic example of, if we know where the really critical crossings are for amphibians, we could think about reducing the amount of traffic on those roads on the few big nights that happen every spring to allow some of the threatened and endangered salamanders that we have to cross the road more freely, or to better support our frog and salamander populations. So I think this one's really cool because people always think about elk and other, like big migrations that happen out west, but we have tiny critters that do that too. Next slide. All right, so I wanted to bring this down to the Torrington level. I think that's, all right, yeah. So we brought it down to the Torrington level. So in green are those core forests that I first talked about. And in purple are these wildlife linkages, these circles that we've drawn on the map. The map is it's not showing every road, but I promise you that each linkage is over top of a road. We're never asking anyone to do anything but walk or drive along a road. And you'll see that some of them are filled in and some of them aren't. The ones that are filled in have already been assessed, and the ones that haven't have not yet been assessed. I think we don't have any in the city of Torrington yet largely because I knew I was coming here and I haven't sent our interns here this summer. Uh, So we have 4 interns this summer who have been doing a lot of linkage assessment work for us. So one thing that could be interesting to think about is assessing these linkages in town to really understand the connectivity that exists throughout the city. Next slide, Nate. So we can then also think about how this applies for strategic conservation planning. So the map has now changed a little bit. It's gotten a little bit busier. The core forests are now color coded by protection status. So we have set this goal of achieving at least 50% protection for every core forest throughout the corridor. So core forests now in orange are less than 50% protected, and core forests in green are over 50% protected. And this gets really interesting when you start to think about the many needs for land in each of our towns and cities, and how we can have conservation and other land uses work together to really think strategically about the landscape. So these maps can always go a step further to really start to overlay different priorities with these core forests to understand, what might be critical lands on the landscape. Next slide. All right. So while I was talking about strategic conservation planning, I did want to bring to your attention one potential funding source for conservation. And this is a funding source that has been around for a long time. It's federal funding that was first enacted in 2004. So you can see on the map there, the Federal Highlands Conservation Act region. It extends across 4 states. But at the end of 2022, it was reauthorized, and it gave us a few new provisions with that reauthorization. Nate, you can press the next.
I got it.
Oh, it's up there. Thank you. So I zoomed in on Connecticut. In orange are the towns that are within the Highlands Conservation Act region. And with this reauthorization, we have the ability to expand the boundaries. So that's what you're seeing on the map in pink. But there's also now new entities that are eligible to directly receive these funds. So it used to be these federal funds went to the state agencies for the state agencies to acquire fee interest in lands or conservation easements, all for conservation. Now towns are eligible to receive these funds directly for towns to acquire conservation interest. And that was brand new at the end of last year. So it's something I wanted to put on your radar as a potential, as you think about potential conservation projects. The Highlands Conservation Act has the ability to do that. It gets authorized at $10 million every year, and it's divvied up across the 4 states. They're still working out all of the details of what piece municipalities will get, since this is a brand new provision. But they did authorize a chunk for this year's Highlands funds to go to municipalities. And essentially you have to apply for it. So if you're interested, we could keep talking about that as well. And I think you can go to the next slide, but that might be it. I wanted to keep it short and sweet and leave plenty of time for y'all to ask me questions. I put the Follow the Forest website on this last slide. It's followtheforest.org. We have lots of interactive maps. If you want to play with the data and see where you fit within the landscape, you can do so. You can look at, the whole corridor and zoom in and out and really see how the data plays around. And then I also put up my contact information because I'm always happy to be in touch with folks. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just a question, a few slides back, you showed that some forests that, when you go back a
Oh,
few,
I'm sorry. Let me pull back up.
were less than 50% protected. How is that assessed?
So essentially, if you take the aggregate, so you have a core forest, let's say it is 500 acres. We look at all of the protected land that overlaps that core forest. And when I say protected, I'm talking permanently legally protected. And we take the acreage of each of those protected lands, add it together and see if it reaches that 50% threshold. So you could have like one parcel at the southern end of the forest and one parcel at the northern end, and we're counting both of those acreages to add up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just, I see a lot of orange.
Yes. Yes.
Is that big one in the center, Nate? Is that Fitzgerald's on Kennedy Drive?
On Kennedy Drive? No.
Well, it's kind of between
Wait,
Winthrop Street and Kennedy.
Yeah, the one with that weird shape that sticks out into the middle of it. Can you
Yeah,
see my
yeah.
cursor? This?
Like a big, long,
Can you see my cursor on your screen?
I'm looking at the one right in the middle that's orange, right where Torrington, right where it says.
Oh, that's the one that I said was Felix or something. It was the one adjacent to the Abeling property we were at the other day.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's why that shows up there. That's a big priority one, obviously,
Okay.
for us. Yeah,
So where's Fitzgerald?
that's if you go to the right of the Torrington, it's not in any blob. It's a very strange looking, like you see almost like a hammer shaped parcel. If you go to the right of Torrington, got to cross Route 8, and it's pretty much right. The big parcels down there,
Oh, okay,
kind of close to East Main Street.
okay.
But-
Oh,
But yeah, those are like it's separated by Route 8 there, so they really and
Yeah,
all the
it's not really
development,
on the-
so it's not its own core, I guess.
I was gonna say, one of the things I found really interesting and that I think other folks find interesting too is with this 250 acre threshold, you start to like you're like, oh, there's a lot of forest over there. And then you're like, oh, but it's fragmented forest. So it's always fun to like look at the landscape and see how your understanding of it fits with this data. And I am a big map person. So
yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see where you can't make a linkage.
yeah. Route 8 is like I mentioned 84 and 90, but Route 8 is one of the most interesting fragmenting features on our landscape too. So you all have an interesting dilemma around here with
Yeah.
that.
One thing this is always like a problem because I've done this kind of modeling before is like old roads and woods roads that are put into the model. So an
Yeah.
example would be like Pognut by Burr Pond there.
Yeah.
You notice that green blob, the dark green one? I mean, that's functionally connected to the rest of that northern area because
Yeah.
that road is the Buttrick Trail.
Okay. And we can fix that.
Okay. I didn't know if how much you fine tune or if it's just kind of like, this is the tool.
No, we do a lot of fine tuning because you will also see, so this model was run on the 2019 land cover data, which means that now there's houses in places there weren't sometimes so it's at 30-meter resolution. So it means that sometimes you get a subdivision that got mapped as a forest because of the way the imagery works. And we love collecting that information and fixing it. So I will pass that along to Stacy and she'll remedy that for us.
So
Okay.
we're looking at 11 possible or 11 linkages to assess in Torrington, is that right? 11, maybe 12?
Yeah. And I brought along with me. So the Follow the Forest website has lots of information about linkage assessments. But I also brought along the form. If you guys want to look at it.
Same time.
Thank you. And so there's an interactive map. That's how I know where
Did you
you
turn
are.
on my screen?
But it turned off.
Yeah,
Oh,
some of the screens are turning off.
Yeah.
oh,
Oh,
okay.
yours came back?
I just restarted it.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, you might have to restart it. So sometimes they do that.
Try to exit out again and, okay.
Oh, that's where you were before you got it back, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Just restarted it with Dante, yeah. Okay.
But so each of the linkages has a unique identifier, a number, and so the data gets submitted to me, and that's basically how I link your data to where you were, is you write down the unique ID, which you pull from our interactive map, and you also write down the road you were on, and so I can use those two features to mark where you were. I will say I added a linkage over Route 8 that I'm very curious about, and I think there's a lot of houses, and I'm not sure that it's a great spot, but part of it was to be thinking about where the connectivity opportunities are across Route 8.
Is it on this map?
Yes, it's the big one in the northeastern
huge
corner. Yeah. Because that was the place the core forests were closest to Route 8, and I
Yeah.
was like, maybe there's some way to get across here.
Well, close to where all the.
Yes. Culverts are a big one, particularly on the busy roads, that they're gonna be the best method for passage. And so sometimes we'll pair our linkage assessments with, I don't know if y'all are familiar with NAC, which is the North Atlantic Aquatic Connectivity Collaborative's culvert assessment tool, NAACC. And they do a really comprehensive assessment of the culverts, and they have an aquatic protocol and a terrestrial protocol. And you have to, in order to be an assessor for the NAC system, you have to attend a series of trainings. So I think it's like 2 days of essentially classroom training, and then you have to basically shadow someone out in the field to then be a NAC assessor. So it's a really rigorous, it's sort of like the opposite end of our assessment, but it's a really great way when the culverts are the best way for animals to pass. So like on Route 8, pairing it with the NAC assessment gives us really detailed information about the culvert. So then, we could work with highway officials to think about replacing that culvert if it needed to improve it for terrestrial or aquatic connectivity or both. So that's just like another piece to the puzzle for sure.
Yeah, that area that you're interested in, the northern part, that's all industrial.
Yeah.
So the large parcels to the right of Route 8 are all industrial park. That's El Grasso.
Yeah.
And then to the left is a lot of mining areas, one of which
Yeah.
is a big time violator, and Haynes is there, like ONG, those big mines. But yeah,
And-
that's all I can think
And
of.
honestly, the mines might be an interesting thing to look at with our core forests, because I'm sure their footprints have changed since we mapped our core forests. I'd be curious if they've impacted any of the cores.
And
Yeah.
there is ultimately with those, there's ultimately a restoration plan.
Yeah.
Mines finish their life. Usually in those areas, they're converted to local business or industrial or some other kind of active use, but there could be opportunities to reforest,
Conservation land.
well, like maybe a portion of it, like a set aside or a corridor that can be, incorporated as restoration using this data.
Yeah.
Interesting way of like amending our plan of conservation and development. You get to assess that and say, these are the ones that would be particularly fortuitous for
Mhm.
reforestation and conservation.
Yeah, our next POCD update is our planner is looking to do it in 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
So we're still kind of, he's just trying to get
Goes- I mean,
funding.
stuff like that goes by fast for me. I don't know about you.
No, absolutely, absolutely. There's not, I'm sure Julie, you've seen that there's not great POCD funding, like
Yeah.
their comprehensive plan funding in New York was like, you could get a, Greenway grant or like
Yeah.
any number of grants to do that. And here it's, you got to find the money somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say on that note, we've had a few towns incorporate Follow the Forest into POCDs. I think Winchester has it in theirs. Washington has not finalized their most recent POCD, but I know that they were working on incorporating Follow the Forest. And there's one other town that's not coming to me. But so when you look to update, including Follow the Forest, I think could be an excellent
I
plan
would
too.
agree with that. Agree with
So.
that. Okay,
Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your meeting, but
well, can we ask, like, so
yeah.
if we were to start, are you sending interns to assess this area or?
I
what's the plan?
I was
Let me
not,
hear.
I think our interns actually finish up on Monday, so no.
Okay, but it's a yearly cycle.
No, so right now we are just trying to assess every linkage once at this point, because
Okay.
we have over 650 mapped.
Yep.
And they're not all of them are mapped at this point. So in theory, each linkage has some sort of lifespan, right? As soon as we assess it, something could change within the linkage. My thinking right now is we assess all the linkages, and then because we're doing this with local people for the most part too, you all now have in your heads where the linkages are. And so when it comes to a point where maybe, someone's working on a project there, you could be like, oh, I visited that linkage and I know so-and-so has built a house or whatever it was, and like maybe we need to reconsider. So for right now, I'm going with let's assess everything once, and then we can see what happens and see, do they have a 3-year lifespan, a 5-year lifespan? I don't know yet.
Well, I guess my question is, we're doing site visits
Yeah.
for our open space inventory. Are you looking to have us be a group who assesses linkages?
If you were interested, I would be really excited for that, and I'd be happy to go out with you all and do one together
Okay.
at some point if that felt like it made it more approachable.
How does everybody on the commission feel about it?
Good. We may want to include other groups too, like the Land Trust
Yeah.
and especially
Yep.
initial walkthrough, because we
That'd be
have
awesome.
Stewart reports for Land Trust and
And the Trails
the
Network.
Trails Network would all be good groups to help.
That would be fantastic.
And
Yeah.
with the Conservation District? Want to be in on that? Have you worked with the Northwest Conservation?
I have not, but we could absolutely invite them.
Okay,
I would be happy for that. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, because they're bigger, I
Yeah.
mean, beyond Torrington, so
Yeah.
that might be helpful. as
Yeah.
well.
That would be fantastic.
Okay.
Cool. Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. You all have my contact information. Does anyone want to follow the Forest sticker too?
I
Oh, I
love
want one.
sticker. Can I have two? I have two kids. All right.
So I find this very interesting because I'm a transportation engineer and I work for the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments.
Excellent.
But really, this is, when I look at road projects, there's a variety of things that I
Yeah.
take into consideration. The big thing is like rain gardens and, things like that. But I never really thought of something like this,
Yeah.
the connections and culverts. I mean, generally when there's culverts, you have to think about fish
Mhm.
passage and having the natural stone replaced back, you put it aside and then you put it back into the culvert and things like that. But I never thought about, other creatures
dry
using
culvert?
it. Yeah.
I mean, I've been thinking about that for a while and I just felt like Torrington, I love that there are these funding opportunities because, our problem is that funding is, we're not a wealthier, municipality,
true,
so
yeah.
funding's hard to come by for conservation.
Well, in the
And it's always at risk when we do
Yeah.
get it. Like we had it for a while, it was really great, and then it
And-
was question and off the budget before we even could answer the question.
And the workaround looking at how culverts serve for terrestrial passage is really interesting. The Nature Conservancy did a retrofit up in the Adirondacks where they put a metal shelf in an existing culvert that served for passage for basically everything from bobcats down. And it was in a spot where there's a lot of roadkill. But it's really interesting, like what sort of specifications you need for different species. So I could send you all NAC has put out some fantastic literature
I'd
that
like
really
to see
helps
that.
with the like, what do you need for different species?
Incorporate it into anything.
Yeah.
Be great.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. So I'll send it to Nate, and Nate, you can maybe
Yeah, I'll
circulate it.
And I don't know how, if you want to give more presentations, but in going to the Council of Governments.
Yeah.
Have people present at the beginning of our monthly board meeting. So
Yeah.
we have 19 member towns, so you kind of get, well, they don't always, not everyone comes to the board meetings, but most of them do. So you kind of have a
Yeah.
wide audience there.
I would be happy to do that. Last I was at the Naugatuck Valley Cog, we were talking Highlands Conservation Act because I was trying to add towns from the
Okay, so
Naugatuck region. But I would be happy to come talk about Follow the Forest and connectivity pieces. I think that'd be great.
I'll share your information with the environmental people that work in our office.
Excellent. Thank you. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank
I'll
you.
let you get back to your meeting.
All right,
Please feel free to reach out if you have
Yeah.
questions or
Okay.
set up a linkage assessment day.
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Julie.
So let's put that on an agenda soon to figure out maybe time to invite her, to invite everybody to learn how to do one.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was something that, it doesn't seem like there's a huge rush on it, but if we want to finish our open space investigations
We're
or.
pretty close, right? We're getting close.
I think I'm gonna try to finish this by the end of the year.
Okay.
And I forgot to ask, she's gone now,
We
if
can
there's like
always
a
email.
time of year, if there's a time of year that's best,
Okay.
right? Like,
But couldn't we incorporate those visits with kind of
we
making
could,
these?
we can grab one
Yeah.
on our way or whatever, it would just be up to when you guys want to do it.
Yeah.
It might, like the winter.
But what I'm
see
saying, is
benefits,
she's saying, like, let's coordinate and I'll come out and do one with you, right?
Right,
And if we invite other groups, like, to me, that would be a first step as opposed to just, incorporating it in without kind of having, I mean, the standards seem relatively clear, but we're already assessing, so we could probably do it. But I'm just saying, like, if we want to use it as an opportunity to bring in some other groups or
yeah.
For the
I mean,
initial.
other citizens, yeah, for the initial one.
Yeah.
One, just to have her
Yeah.
come and the other groups and stuff,
Yeah.
and not combine it, but then in the future, maybe combine it.
Maybe,
Or they go off and do their own area. right? Like they could figure out other areas of need and do them.
Maybe it could be a work opportunity for you, Karen, to put it on the clock time, to do the training, but, cause I don't know what her availability, if she'd be available on weekends.
Yeah.
But I can ask, do you want to figure out a time? Do you want to do it next year? It's kind of up to you. I can be the scheduling person.
So, let's see, I'm kind of looking at these images that she's got. And it almost, all of them kind of look like they're done when there's no leaves on the tree. Which would help, right? If things aren't,
I mean, if there's snow and we can find tracks, how could that not be?
right, that's what I'm saying. So it seems like it's a kind of a more winter project, winter or,
Early spring, maybe.
yeah,
Well, right, like if they're looking for amphibians, then it's
but then
spring.
it's not, yeah,
Looking for bears, it's not the winter.
right.
It's kind of.
Are they looking for, part of the thing was tracks, but
Right.
part of it was the canopy and the,
Yeah, I'm sure that they designed it so that it could be, they had all their interns working in the summer.
right, oh, so they were doing it in the,
Maybe
okay,
most of it is in the summer.
okay. And did I hear that right, that was just like a one-shot thing for them? They just got, like, whatever the internship period was, that they got interns, it's over? You said,
Yeah, I don't know if they're like, I don't really know what the deal with their interns are.
Okay.
If they're gonna restart it or what's going on. with
Okay.
that.
Was there a deadline for the funding that she was talking about?
I think it's rolling. I did have this conversation with her, about the Highlands Conservation Act funding.
Mhm.
It's the kind of thing where, it seems like it's federal funding, so it'd be difficult application. We want to partner with Heritage,
Yep.
potentially something, HVA would be
Yep.
great, like get as many, the state, it would have to be a pretty big project.
Yep.
I know at least one recently funded Highlands acquisition was, on, Barbaret. Do you know where Barbaret Road is? It's off of Newfield, kind of near the border of Winchester. If you take
Okay.
Newfield Road all the way to the end,
Yeah.
to
Yeah, yeah.
Winchester,
yeah,
there's a little spur road that goes up there.
Mhm.
There's a piece of Pognut that's there, and they purchased another 100 acres that allowed them to actually get to access that. That piece was landlocked, and they can.
okay.
And that was Highlands Conservation Funding in Torrington.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah, so it's happened here before, but the
Okay.
state has been the one driver's seat. for
Yep.
Pognut,
Okay.
So it didn't really affect
I'm
us.
just thinking like that, the Abeling Mountain area that connects, that would be a good thing to have set our sights on.
Mm.
I don't know if it does connect, it ends up connecting, to Pognut and, Sunnybrook and Burr Pond, so,
That property, without sharing too many specifics, is they had a kind of a short list of kind of priority properties that they didn't want to make public. But that one of those ones up in that corridor there is identified by them, which would mean that they'd probably be interested in expending some of their own resources to secure it.
okay.
But the question just comes down to who's gonna court the.
Who's gonna initiate it, or who's?
Yeah, and.
All right, well, I guess if they know that it's something that's important to us as well,
Right.
right? Does that-
Yeah, and I
help?
had a basic conversation with her and she knows, I don't know that they're gonna do the door knocking. And as
Yeah.
a city, we really shouldn't do the door knocking.
Right, right,
So it would really be like if it was a land trust priority, or Torrington Trails.
Yeah.
There was trail opportunities in there. It'd really be a nonprofit sort of thing to bring them to HVA.
Yeah.
Make that connection and say, here, there's funding for this. Do you want to? And they wouldn't have to necessarily, those big properties wouldn't have to necessarily do the whole thing. They could carve out a couple building lots. They could carve out 10 building
right,
lots
right,
and conserve the rest.
Right.
And and they could still get paid
yeah,
for that. So, I think really our role is to help facilitate, the municipality can now apply. So that's definitely something the municipality can do, but it really would be nonprofits to bring them to the table
yeah,
for us to initiate
Yeah.
anything,
Yeah.
working with HVA. That's how I kind of see it happening. So it's hard without knowing that. If we incidentally knew them, it would be different.
right,
But,
right.
you know, I don't know. I don't know if it's something that the land trust ever talks about. You guys are so busy. I don't know if there's ever proactive courting of.
Well, for instance, we just visited a property off Benton Avenue. And talking about, someone's going to donate a piece of property, and we're talking to the neighbors while we're walking on the property. And, they were worried that they would have to cough up a lot of money to acquire it themselves because it was a very nice wooded, kind of surround to their house. And so when we told them that it's being donated, they're essentially out in their front yard doing cartwheels. So it goes over nice.
Mhm.
They get to, an extra wooded buffer around their property. It's a nice
Mhm.
discussion in that respect. I would expect it to be nicely received.
Well, I think it depends. I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I don't really know. But I don't, but there are not a lot of properties on that particular property. There's like, under 10 landowners from
Yeah.
the Abeling Mountain to Sunnybrook. Like they're big tracts of land. I don't know who owns them or whether there's houses out there or what.
If you were,
There's definitely hunting cabins.
so we're talking, this is Red Mountain Ave,
Yep,
the Red Mountain Trail, Newfield Road, right?
yep,
So we're talking this parcel
yes,
as
Yep.
like the clear giant priority there.
yep.
And then this is Sunnybrook immediately adjacent to it. And there's some big parcels down south of this red highlighted one. And there's some this is conservation land that we visited this like past month. Right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it's just about who's the owner. Let's see. It is
Show me where Sunnybrook is. again.
Felix. It's, or no, Felix and Francis Mercante. Sunnybrook is here.
Okay, that's Sunnybrook. Okay.
It's scale dependent, so I can't get it. It's so big, it doesn't all show up.
Yeah.
But that's Sunnybrook there.
What's the acreage on that property?
It is 358.
Oh.
And then it's adjacent to,
This, yeah.
these big ones too. That's 86, 71, 54, so it's and then Sunnybrook to the north. So it's a big block.
Mhm.
It is really special.
Okay. I mean, I think that let's like discuss scheduling at the next meeting. We'll move on from this time, but let's put this on the agenda for the next meeting and we can kind of figure out timing and some other stuff. Okay, so old business. Oh, discussion, chicken regulations in Torrington.
Yeah, and I mean, it's up to you how much you want to spend on this, but I just thought I would present our current regulations so that everyone understands where we're at, and it's a big issue.
Okay,
The way that our department, because zoning is the one who enforces chicken regulations, we've been having a lot of issues with it. The city of Torrington defines a farm as something, so all of the way we're enforcing is through our definition section. Torrington defines farm as anything over 3 acres can be a farm, but you have to have that minimum to be a farm. And you can only keep farm animals on a farm, and a chicken is listed as a farm animal. Therefore, you do not have a farm,
cannot have a
you
chicken.
cannot have a chicken. And if you do not have 3 acres, you cannot have a farm. That is how we've been enforcing it. To be honest, most of our complaints come from downtown. Like 99.99% of complaints come from downtown, where we're talking lots that are 0.1 acres, half an acre,
Mhm.
There's some on the edge that are maybe an acre, but nothing in like the rural areas ever comes in because people who are up there care.
Right, they don't care about a chicken or a rooster.
The idea is to try to come up with something, 3 acres seems to everyone to be unreasonable.
Yep.
At least to most people.
Well, and do you need a farm just to have chickens?
Right.
I know, when you can.
The,
Brooklyn.
a little bit of history on planning. So planning and zoning would have to make the call. They're the ones who who would amend the regulations. A few years back, Jeremy, our city planner, requested or submitted something saying, why don't you drop it to 2 acres? And they refused.
Who's they? This is.
Planning and
Planning
zoning
and zoning.
commission.
Okay.
So he's like, if they're not gonna do 2 acres, that's like, you know, and there's some people that are just particularly opposed to it, possibly for personal reasons.
Mhm.
And so there's been a recent swell in interest, news articles on
Mhm.
how unreasonable this is. Yeah, Aaron's husband Randy, who's on the Wetlands Commission, is working with Jeremy right now
Mhm.
to develop something a little bit more sensical. That I think right now the way that Jeremy was thinking that they could sell it would be, and we're also thinking that if it comes from a farmer, it's a little bit more, it's coming from an actual resident rather than our planning department. That, you know, it's a little harder to ignore.
Mhm.
Trying to do something where it allows smaller acreages for keeping chickens in the rural districts. So that's R40 and R60, which is still,
You're still gonna have all the
Still-
issues with the.
right, it
with the
doesn't
stuff
solve
in
any
front,
of our
but it's a place
issues.
To start.
But at least if you own 2.5 acres on Newfield Road, you can have chickens there.
Yeah.
For the most part, like,
I'm interested in when, so. My parents bought a property on Winthrop Street,
Mhm.
just a couple houses down from Route 4. That had, you know, it's two city lots, like it's a multifamily on one lot and it has a lot next to it, you know, just an extra lot. And when they purchased that in the 80s, there was a giant, like it spanned both city lots, chicken coop back there. Hadn't been chickens in it for a really long time. It was dilapidated, but at some point, I mean, I don't think that house was the only house on Winthrop Street. You know, at some point we had urban.
My grandparents owned a
Urban
house on
chicken.
Winthrop Street and I remember my aunt and my mother talking about their mother who had chickens and she would, you know, the
Yeah.
chickens and.
Yeah.
You know, just down below Route 8 and it's, you know, their backyard is like this big, but
Yeah.
they had chickens. So,
So yeah, it's
So if you're-
interesting.
I
At
don't
what
under-
point did it change? I'd be interested in what.
and why do you need a certain acreage?
Well,
to
this is,
have-
I mean, I'm just kind of interested in how it changed. Right now, I mean, like I said, everybody, or most people think that the 3 acres for a chicken or chickens is kind of unreasonable. And, you know, you have a situation where you have these animals that can be raised in smaller spaces and you have you have inflation crisis with food and it's a nice cheap source of protein for
Mhm.
people.
Right.
But I think it has to be regulated personally, you know, I mean, it's gonna happen eventually. The pressure is just gonna get to the point with the downtown population where somebody's gonna have to do something about it. So I think it's coming down the pike. It might not be, you know, the next 5 years, but I think it's coming down the pike. And I just think that there have to be common sense regulations because I don't think it's unreasonable for people to want it, but you need to have rodent control. Like you need to have measures in place so you're not creating a situation where you're bringing rats in, or, you know, the animals have to be safe. Like, you know, on Calhoun Street and chickens are crossing the road while you're driving, you know, it's kind of, you know, so they have to have an enclosed area. I mean, it's hilarious to
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Right, so
And
it has
it's
to
not
be
like people are
contained,
really
for
speeding, but the
sure.
animals need to be contained. You can't be a nuisance to your neighbors.
Mhm.
You'd have to, you know, you can't have roosters, you know, and, you know, which means, you know, that's not a hard thing to do, but it's it's a little bit more expensive, you know, to purchase, just whatever, but, I'm just I'm interested in 2 things, 2 bits of information. When did we go to this current model
yeah.
of the definition of a farm? And then the other thing is, I don't know if Rista Malanka would have it, but she was,
I couldn't find it.
you looked
Like the
for it?
point- The point sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's gone.
It is? Bummer.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a good idea.
Well, I'm sure you can just Google that, or does she remember like what town that was modeled on?
Can you explain that for everybody?
Yeah,
Sure.
I have no idea
What
what
the
that
point
is.
system is?
Yeah.
Okay, so what it was, is that each animal is given a number of points. So the more land that animal needs, the more points they are. So I'm just gonna make stuff up. A chicken might be 1 point or even a half point, and a goat might be 10 points. Okay, maybe it's 20 points. I don't really know. And then a cow might be, 75 points. So your acreage of land, like the available acreage, like minus the house. And so the land that you actually have has a certain number of points. And depending on the points that you have, you can mix and match whatever animals you want within
That
the,
box,
with,
yeah.
yep, so that they fit, are below or equal to the points that you have in land.
And they're doing that in other communities.
And they're doing that in other communities. So they're doing, particularly it's being used in urban areas where people want, or, in cities where you have an urbanized area and then you have more rural areas.
So I was looking into, just generically, some poultry zoning regulations. And I looked at like, Waterbury,
Uh-huh.
you only need an acre there. Bridgeport doesn't even specify.
Yeah,
acreage.
that's what I think
They
is
have
kind of
zero.
interesting,
They have
right? Like,
zero acreage requirement, but you do need a permit.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, I'm coming from a family where I have 3 kids and 4-H poultry.
yeah,
We know how to take care of our chickens. Rodents, if your coop is lifted off the ground, is usually not an issue.
well,
The
somebody might want something like ducks where they're at ground level,
yeah,
but like a predator-proof pen, like hardware cloth, like things that are rodent-proof, but whatever, continue.
but I'm sure that we can create boundaries around owning chickens.
Mhm.
But I mean, when we talk about food insecurity comes up a lot again, 4-H. And we talk about food forests, and we talk about all these different ways of serving the community.
Yep.
I think this is like low hanging. This is so easy. It's like having a cat. Like you literally put food and water out for it. You let it out in the morning. They put themselves away. You close the door.
Mhm.
And if you don't have a rooster, they're very quiet.
Yep.
I mean, some towns put restrictions on how many you can own.
Mhm.
That would make sense, whether or not you can have roosters, how far away it is from lot lines of neighbors and stuff like that. That all makes sense. The 3 acres is very lofty, especially when I start looking at these other larger cities than us.
Well, the opportunity here is, for if Randy's gonna submit an application for a zone change.
Yeah.
The formal way to do it. So or not a zone change, a regulation amendment.
Yep.
He's gonna submit that. For a regulation amendment, it's a public hearing. Public hearing is open. Finally,
People can come
speak
and have a
on the
voice
issue.
about it, yeah,
Without that opening,
right,
you can't talk about it. It's not
Right.
city council. There's no open discussion. It's whatever the business is that has a public hearing that allows people to speak. But otherwise, they're not allowed to bring it up at all. So they don't have to hear anything about it until that opens up. And I think once that hearing opens up, there's gonna be a lot of interest.
oh, yeah,
People are gonna circulate it.
Yep.
It's gonna be crazy. So I think that's the opportunity that they're gonna have a lot of pressure on them. Just getting, I mean, everyone comes in. I've done a lot of chicken enforcement. Huge thing that our office does. It's really simple because we don't,
Well, I'm curious, what are the complaints that you're getting from the downtown?
there's
people?
rats. There's, the chickens are running across my property. This rooster's attacking my child.
Well, why is there a particular rat problem? What's the connection?
They're
Food.
not securing their food and the rats.
Oh,
are
it's
eating the
just
food.
how,
I find that a lot of people have rat issues when they have a coop that sits directly on the ground, flat on the
Oh.
ground. We have at our place, they're either on trailers or they're on like stilts.
Yeah.
And it's tall enough that the chickens can go under. So it's not like you're gonna have rodents burrowing underneath it. Because it does make it really easy for the rodents to come out and get any food that's kicked around.
okay.
So like, yeah, if you have
But without
something-
that, I mean, we don't have rodent issues at all.
So if somebody wants like ducks,
Hmm.
say, they roost on the ground. So you'd need to have like whatever your coop is gonna be is on the ground. It has to have hardware cloth, like 1/4-inch hardware cloth underneath
Hmm.
as a barrier, like, screwed in place as a barrier to rats. And then the enclosure would also have to have hardware cloth, like chicken
Okay.
wire's not really rodent proof or predator proof. And
Okay,
so, you're looking to create something that has, that is a deterrent to wildlife,
Yeah.
because, that kind of stuff it can also bring in bears.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Like there's
foxes.
definitely, yeah,
Yeah.
well, yeah, but I mean, like people aren't too worried, well, maybe, I mean, a cat could bring in a fox or a coyote or whatever too, but yeah, you're gonna have more predators coming and trying to get them if they're just like running around free, particularly you want it to be, not easy for them to be prey.
So the way that I see this going forward, the opportunities with the hearing,
Yep,
the regulation amendment will come in. I even think that it's my understanding that Randy is gonna schedule a meeting just off the books with commission, just to introduce the idea, solicit their input, just get the conversation going in a
Mhm.
non-adversarial way. Come back at some point with the formal amendment, present it. The public hearing is gonna be open. It's open to modification, like they can strike down or do whatever they want with it before accepting it. At that point, it's gonna get circulated to all of the internal departments for review. I will forward it to conservation for formal comment. And so that gives you all time to kind of look at regulations, dive into it yourself, and then have that discussion when that comes in. And then we'll produce a formal memo outlining some of the things that the Conservation Commission thinks are the most important for incorporation into that. And then that's a kind of the opportunity for the commission to have have some more credibility than you're gonna get a lot of people coming in here who are gonna be like, I want chickens on my, whatever, because I think without any kind of basis.
Mhm.
So, but, having the Conservation Commission weigh in kind of a measured, fact-based way is, I think, gonna carry a lot of weight.
yeah,
Especially when they're gonna want to placate a large group of people that might be very angry.
Yeah.
That are gonna show up.
Well, there's some of these bird flus that are going around now that, at the 4-H fair, they didn't even put their chickens on display and concerned that it would spread, diseases through the fair event.
Mhm.
So I'm wondering if the ordinance was enacted in the inner part of town because they're worried about that proximity of the birds to each other, spreading the diseases.
It's very rare for humans to get, to catch bird flu,
Yeah,
a human to,
but are they
Bird
worried about
transmission.
wiping out the bird population, for instance, you kill
Um,
all the chickens in
The
town?
way.
so the last few cases of avian bird flu, since, I haven't checked it since the 4-H fair, so I don't know if there's been anything since that.
Yeah.
But before that, the last ones were found in wild geese, I believe, or ducks, back in February.
Yeah.
So it was like over abundance of caution to not bring in.
Yeah.
So,
But I will say, I don't think that there was any rationale to this.
Oh,
I think there's no regulation of chickens specifically, and there's no ordinance passed by the city government. And so it's a blank hole, and all we have is the definition of a farm and a farm animal stating that
Right,
you
it's
can
not
keep a farm
really
animal on a
appropriate,
farm, and that's what
but it's
we're.
just what they have
so
to
that
fall
was,
back on.
so Kim was telling me that when she was an enforcement officer, people would have, there would be like a complaint about chickens or something. And she'd say like, we don't regulate pheasants, we don't regulate quail. And so was it the definition of what a farm animal is?
Yes, it's a little, squishy. Here, I'll just read it to you right now. I brought the book for that reason. Any animal that is customarily kept in a barn, stable, coop, or pen leaves a lot of room. Farm animals include, but are not limited to,
Okay.
horses, cattle, sheep, geese, chickens, ducks, pigs, and llamas.
Okay,
Guinea pigs have been interpreted as farm animals in our regulation, and people have taken action against guinea pigs. People who are raising
them for food,
larger numbers of guinea
Yeah,
pigs.
yeah.
For slaughter in their yard.
I didn't know that. people like guinea
It's
guinea
the
pigs
stuff-
are delicious. Really good.
Yeah, there's
If you've ever gone to Peru.
the Ecuadorian population in the city are, guinea pig is a.
pigs. Okay.
okay.
So it is pretty broadly interpreted, or has been since I've been here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Rabbits, I have not included. If someone has an outdoor hutch with a pet rabbit, I say, is this a pet? It's more like the use, right? If they can demonstrate that they are not deriving farm products from it. Chickens has not been something that, people, I feel like people have probably said therapy chickens or whatever. That has been pretty straight line, but like for some of these other exotic animals, it's been sort of, are you raising it for food or farm products, or are you keeping it as a pet?
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
and that's the chicken. We get chicken calls nonstop.
All right, old business, World Cleanup Day planning.
Yeah, we've done a lot of planning on that. We have an agreement that we're working out the fine details, but they have provided us with some, with basically their assurance that they will provide it subject to us modifying some things in our certificate of insurance. So we're good with them. The only issue with their approval, and after I wanted to wait till I talked to you about it to follow up with their manager. So here's the job lot plaza, right? Everyone can see it.
Yep.
This is where we had a meeting, on site. Steve and Christine came and we walked the trail to get an idea, walked lay of the land, all that. The dumpster is gonna go here.
When you say here, do you guys see his cursor?
No.
I don't see his cursor.
Oh,
No
sorry,
cursor.
I thought I might have a cursor, so I'll zoom
See
way
cursor.
in. You see that area?
Yep.
So those parking spaces.
Yep.
And I'll zoom back out again. Those parking spaces are where we'll set the dumpster up and our tables somewhere near it, but not too close. For, for register, check-in, food, all that stuff. I'm working to get, because we're used to doing it at Co Park where we have an awning. I'm working to get us the chairs and the tables, a covering, so in case it rains or mists or whatever, or it's
Like one of those
excruciatingly
pop-up,
hot.
canopies.
Yeah, one of those kid Parks and Rec has some, so we're gonna get that. But Ocean State Job Lot, I'm convinced they expressed it differently when I talked to her initially, wants us all parking over here. Or maybe, no, they wanted us parking over here. Outside, nowhere near any of the businesses.
So in that little triangle right there.
Yeah, over here.
Yeah.
So we need some kind of signage.
Right, so we'd have to do some kind of either posting someone there saying, hey, park here, some
Yep.
signage, and then, people have to take the walk.
Well,
A
Yeah,
lot of walking. They
that-
could
that
drop
could be
people
okay.
off if they have like an older person or they want to drop people off and someone can go park. We can figure out how.
Did you want to put the dumpster near that water body there in the center of the park, going down? Right there?
here?
Yeah, where the beavers are.
Wait, why?
I don't know, just if you want to set up the tent area around these other clothing donation areas.
Well, we were gonna
It's
set
a
up
little
by
bit
where
shaded.
people are gonna be accessing the Red Mountain Trail. But I mean, the way that the agreement we got was for us to be setting it up here.
Okay.
If everyone wants, I can try to ask and see if we can make that minor modification.
Yeah,
They may not care there because, but then we're gonna have a lot of people walking across the parking.
I think
Back.
that the dumpster's better off in that location. We just need to have a person with a orange vest and a sign saying World Cleanup Day, park here
Here.
and get instructions.
And then they can, once people go to park there,
Yeah.
someone can say, hey, drop your party off
Yeah, if
there,
you- yeah, do you want
back,
to, right?
leave your car.
Yeah.
It's a little convoluted, but it's what we need to do to
Yeah.
access the site at this
Right.
point. But that way, when people bring trash off the Red Mountain Trail, they can, dump it right in the dumpster instead of carrying it across the
yeah,
parking lot.
yeah.
Mhm.
Because there's a lot of, we could clean that river area too. There's a lot of
Yes.
garbage along the river because it just blows off of the parking lot into this river, the sides of the parking lot.
I think that was my thought too, is that, there is a lot of trash on the Red Mountain Trail, but, we might want to send kids or groups, that don't want to go into the woods in that area, kind of
Mhm,
ask them what their
mhm.
preference is. I do think it's an interesting opportunity to kind of get people onto the Red Mountain Trail to show them what's gonna be there, like kind of as it looks now, and get them excited about the transformation that's gonna be there and cleaning it up and being a part of it. But yeah, I guess it all just depends on who shows up and what they really want to do. And, maybe we might end up cleaning the whole Red Mountain Trail right away and,
Right.
send people elsewhere, and we have plenty of trash
Yep.
on site. So I don't think that's gonna be a problem.
I know I have it on my calendar. Can you remind me of the date?
Yes, it's September 16th from 9 to noon.
Okay, so what do we have food? Where did we get?
So we are gonna work, I wanted to bring, yes, so we always get donations from Dunkin' Donuts for breakfast.
Yep.
We can work on that. They do it really easily. They're just like, here's a bunch of donuts and coffee and all that. Ashley, who's works in our office, she's gonna look to see if the donut shop maybe wants to do it to switch it up a little bit, but having the box of Joe is really helpful. I don't know what they do for that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But she's gonna explore it and see if they
Okay.
want to make a donation. 'Cause we have no money to spend on this, so it's all donation or nothing. For the lunch, we've relied exclusively on donations in the past. Last year I got pizza from the one on High Street. I don't remember what that's called, the one kind of by the intersection.
Frank's?
Roma?
Roma.
Oh, Romaka.
But I don't know if they're gonna do that again for us. In the spring, Cafe Soul,
Yeah,
but
but I purchased
Christine's,
it.
yeah, she purchased it at a discount.
Yeah, I think so. I basically said, how many people can you feed for $150? This is what I want.
It was
Yeah.
good
And they
food,
thought
too.
they did a
Yeah.
good job. Yeah.
So I would request, if one of you wants to take, or multiple, take the lead of calling places and asking for donations. I did that the first time and it was thankless and took a very long time to get to Roma.
So,
People want to offer you discounts, but we have no money, so.
Right.
Even like Big Y, would they?
I don't know. So here is what
The
I talked
bigger
to-
Places that.
to
might-
Yeah.
Keith. Keith Much, he's the person who started, it was actually the other one, it was Clean Up the World Day, but whichever it is, it is. But
Okay.
he started it, he said we should do a fall cleanup, we'll do Clean Up the World Day, and he runs Torrington Family Kempo on the Winston Road, and he knows a lot of families, and he's very involved in all kinds of things. So he, I asked him because he seemed to have not much problem getting donations. One time he had bagged lunches coming from Angie's. I can't remember. I mean, he just always had something and it was a different place every time. And what he said he did, and this is his lifestyle. So that is why I was like, I'm just going to purchase something. But he goes to lunch a lot. He doesn't start working till after school and on weekends. So goes out to lunch, and while he's at lunch, he says, and it's usually the local places, and he says to them, hey, I have an event and we're looking for donations. Is there anything that you could donate? Here are the types of donations: bottles of water, bagged lunches. We're looking to, we might have 100 people. So, and I know it's a big ask. And he says that you have to expect some disappointment. So, that it might take 4 or 5 different places before you find one. So I'm thinking about that. I don't eat lunch. Whenever I do, if I bring my kids, it's like $80. So I figure that if it's 4 or 5 places, I might as well just, lay out the cash. And Seoul is a place that I do like to go to, and I spend a lot of money there, and they're very reasonably priced. So I went and I asked. I didn't really even ask them for a donation. I was just like, this is what we're doing and how many people can you feed for this amount of money? And I thought that they did a good job. And I guess if worst comes to worst, we can do that again. Jimmy's stores, this might be a reasonable place to ask, like local businesses. I
Yeah.
guess Nardelli's is local, maybe Big Y. I don't know, but I think if you're, it depends on whether.
I almost feel like the Big Y thing might be more, so we go to Lowe's and Home Depot too, and we just go in there, we're like, hey, we're doing a local event, and they write us up a free voucher for $100.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Cause it's just like they put
It's
it on
just a
their
thing that they do.
community, their community engagement, they check it off their
Yeah.
box, they have a certain
Okay.
amount of money.
So, yeah, I mean,
So, Big Y or Stop and Shop
Yeah.
or Market 32, like they might have like sandwich platter or something
Mhm.
or like
Yeah.
free. I
And
don't know
they'll,
how they.
they'll make
cater
big
or
party
anything.
pizzas.
Wraps or something.
actually,
Oh, yeah.
Big Y makes a huge pizza for very little. I mean, a really good price.
So, I mean, I would love if someone volunteered to call some places.
I would do it and I would go in person and ask who you need to talk to.
That's of course more effective.
Yeah,
Well, I'll volunteer to call Big Y,
okay.
Yeah.
or go there. So
So, yeah, what are we expecting for turnout?
yeah. How many
So
people are we
Torrington
talking?
Trails is really gonna promote it. So whoever's in their network, because it's like they can loop the trail element into it. They always come anyway and they're always big, big promoters of it, but I think people who are interested in the trail, they're gonna try, it's gonna be more of a trail type event. I released the press release and I've gotten no call from the press. Come on, guys. What else are you reporting on?
Right.
They come into the planning and zoning office, they're like, what's juicy, and of course they haven't showed up since I released that, so. Uh, so anyway, yeah, so I don't really know. I mean, last year we had no one, right? But this year I sent the flyer out to Karate Studios to the list that we talked about. I sent one to all those people. I sent it to the Boy Scouts, to Workomen. They actually they were like, oh, we would have loved to do it, but we have a camp out that night. So I followed up with Sequasin. And I haven't heard anything back from them.
Okay.
So I haven't heard people knocking down the door, and this is always kind of a slow one. So I don't know, 50 people is
Yeah,
probably the
yeah, I
max.
think 50 would be
50.
probably.
Yeah,
a good
we'd be
turnout.
happy with that.
50 people, all right, and so we would need this obviously on the 16th, around noon.
Yeah,
Um,
at noon.
And it could be pizza.
Could be
wraps,
grinder sandwiches, it could
grind-
be, sometimes it's
They
been
do
pasta
giant
with a salad.
grinders.
What?
They used to do giant grinders
Yeah.
there. All right, I'll
You
ask.
you wanna have like a
Yeah, they might have some ideas.
vegetarian option. But yeah, they might have ideas of what they could do.
Okay,
And I can, if you call Big Y, I'll give Stop and Shop a call.
thank you.
Does BJ's do that kind of stuff? Do they have a community outreach thing?
I don't know. I need a bigger company. It seems like they like Dunkin' Donuts. That's how we always get the free donation from Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
They're
Like a
like-
write-off for them, yeah.
they're just aggregating it, and it's just, it doesn't hurt them to.
I can go
talk
into
to Joe.
BJ's and ask if they have like a community, what is it? Community engagement, community outreach?
Yeah, we'll just say we're
Donation.
holding an event, and do you do donations of
Okay,
lunch?
yep. I'm just thinking like BJ's, I could probably get a couple big cases of water. Do we have water?
We have 30 bottles of water. I think that's
Okay.
probably enough. Because for Clamp the Earth Day, for Earth Day, we had 2 cases of water, and we went through about half of it. But there's
Okay.
a lot of people there.
Yeah,
Okay,
So
Aquarian showed up at one of our festivals recently to just give out water, so they might be worth a call.
Oh, probably to
Yeah.
promote themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
really? Do you have a choice of whether to use Aquarian or not? That's weird.
I don't know.
It's not like you have a choice.
Probably like a.
Well, they just don't want you
PR
complaining.
campaign.
It's bottled water, they're handing out their own bottled water. so.
Don't tell us we don't do anything for you. We gave you all the water. We give you water bottle, water in tap.
I mean, it's like a monopoly. It's not like you have a choice.
Yeah, and then they backcharge you.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's try to get Starbucks.
So it's starting at 9. What time should we all arrive?
I think I usually get there at 8. Cause that's usually enough time to, set the table up and chairs. There's not a lot to set up, right? It's just like, we get all the supplies out, we have gloves and bags already.
Yeah.
A registration form, or just like, a sign-in sheet essentially. You usually do maps and stuff. We don't have to do any of
No,
that.
we don't have to do that, yeah.
We just, although what we would do and Tom Candefa brought this up, we should still encourage people, if they want to go clean up they want to take bags and clean up their own stuff and bring it back to our dumpster, like,
But they're absolutely.
they're absolutely welcome and, you know,
Yeah.
like.
Their own neighborhood or something.
Yeah.
Right, let us know where they're
Yeah.
gonna be putting the bags and we can send someone out there. We
Yeah.
also have we have a work truck now, so you wouldn't even have to use yours if you don't want it.
Oh, okay. The call-in number was handy to go pick up,
Yeah.
when you told us locations, go pick up the garbage bags, that worked out.
Yeah, we
pretty
have to
good.
figure that out though, because I don't want to give my cell phone out again.
Oh, yeah. Is there another way to do that?
I feel like we can kind of.
You don't have a business
Okay.
cell phone? You don't have a city cell phone?
Get a
No,
Google.
I want a city, I don't want to, because
Don't you get a Google number just for that event?
it doesn't work like, well, I tried to do this with IT and figure out how we could like do something on our tablets, you know? But if it's Google, our tablets don't have Wi-Fi.
Oh,
So it's like, you know, you have to be at a location to to do the call through the internet. Um, and mobile hotspots never work for me. So, I don't know. But we don't have to do that.
Right, we don't have to worry about it for
If
this.
someone says they're gonna go out and they want us to pick it up, like, I can give them my number on the fly, you know,
Okay.
but,
Yeah.
but yeah, it'd be nice that we hand out all this paper slips with the locations, to put an actual number on it, you know, print a number on there.
Can you only get your city email at your hard?
I would need internet connection, but I guess I could, if
No,
someone
I'm
had
just wondering whether you can check it from your phone.
I try not to hook it up to my phone, so I'm not tempted to look.
Okay, okay, okay,
That's my own personal
okay.
thing. But anyway, let me just make sure and then how to direct parking, you know, I don't know, is that something that we wanna like figure out now? Like, so they're gonna be in one spot? I can bring vests, that's.
Yeah,
like
so
the
I just
thing.
think we need to have a sign. And what can we get for a sign? Or make?
Yeah, I could probably make a sign and get like a cone with a stake, you know,
Okay.
and try, and we can all wear our high vis and
Yeah,
maybe I'll get a flag or get something to draw attention to people to park. We can put signs up, you know, we have those, the yard signs. We can put them up at the entrances to the plaza and say like, follow me here and try to build
call
something.
5 Points or call Torrington Downtown Partners and ask if we can borrow one of their men. That are on top of that building.
Oh, it's so funny seeing it there. I'm like, that's a violation, you know?
You should call and say, so by the way, this is a violation, but we're wondering,
We'll take
we're
it.
wondering whether.
yeah, did you need folding tables or anything?
I'm gonna get that through Park and Rec. And since we have the truck now at work, we can do all this
Okay.
tomorrow, like the day
Okay.
before, just load it all up and so you guys don't have to be involved with that.
Oh, you got a hold of Park and Rec?
I've gotten a hold of their project manager person, but not
Okay.
the director.
Oh, my goodness. The elusive director.
Because if we could get a conservation commission sign that goes, you know, we could string it up across the.
Well, what do we have? We have an Earth Day sign? What do we have? We have some kind of
We
vinyl.
do, because we put them up around town. But I mean, we have Earth Day ones and we have Clean Up the
We
World.
have a vinyl banner, or we used to. Do we still have
Oh.
it?
I can look. I'll look
Okay.
in the
Dig
cabinet
around,
stuff, yeah.
because there's a vinyl banner somewhere.
If it just says one of those things, we use. Earth
Yeah.
Day.
Yeah, I mean, I can figure out, you know, we have tons of those yard signs. So at the
Yep.
very least, when people enter, we can say like, follow the arrow. And
Yeah, so
really
that-
keep them up,
that-
and
yeah,
point
yep.
people to where they need to go.
Yeah, and I would-
then I can try to get flag or something to just like, you know.
Yep.
Attract people, and then with the high vis too.
Yeah.
Like the vests. It should,
Yeah.
people will be looking and then they'll see activity. and,
Yeah, yeah.
So when you have these events, do you have someone take photos and then post them afterward to
we
kind of,
should.
you know,
we
promote,
should.
hey, this is what's going on.
The
in
most we do
Washington."
is that I try to take photos and usually fail, and then Steve takes some or something, and then I give them to the mayor's office, and they post them
They
on
do.
Facebook.
Mm.
Good,
Yeah,
okay.
but I think that people, like we as individuals on the commission, should, you know what happened, like, so I always used to post photos. I would take pictures, my kids always were doing it. I'd take pictures of my kids on some horrible busy road, picking up trash. And, you know, like a thumbs up and a bunch of bags, and I would, I post it on Facebook, or I post on T-Town Touring to Chatter, like one of those things. And people will be like, oh, I'm gonna, do it next year. I mean, they never do, but, but like there actually is a lot of, I think that we should like take photos and share the photos with each other and then,
Try to get them out there to the.
yeah,
don't
maybe,
know.
I mean, if, maybe we should plan that ahead of time.
Yeah.
That, somebody maybe is
Yeah.
in charge of, doing some photography and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
trying to promote it.
It's good PR.
Because it's also, it will help us promote it the following year. I
Yeah.
think that to have a
Well,
flyer, but to also have some
And the
photography.
nice thing with this is because Torrington Trails is so involved in this,
Yeah,
they're gonna be taking pictures, they're gonna be
Okay.
promoting it,
Mhm.
and so they're always involved, but like, now they're really, really involved, because they're also doing our public, for the grant, they're gonna be helping spearhead the public engagement portion of that. So if we tell them, we'll tell Mark, like, hey, like, we need tons of pictures, like, they'll
Right.
be all over it.
Good,
oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I feel like their network is crazy, and like that meeting
So-
that we had where they got for the Red Mountain Trail, they got tons of people showed up to that,
So maybe, we send out an email, just saying so. And
Okay.
like, let's not assume that they're gonna do it. Let's just say.
No, yeah, I'll definitely,
We
I'll
need a
follow
lot
up with
of
them.
photography. And that will help us promote these events next year.
Mhm.
They will, they're very active.
Great.
All right,
That's all I
so,
had, that's all I had for this. It's really just the food is the big thing. And so if
Okay.
you have like a brainstorm moment, just run with it.
okay,
Don't assume that food has been secured. I'll let everyone know if I
Okay.
hit something and if you do something, share it
Okay.
with the group.
okay, so, food forest planning update.
So I did a little bit of investigation on these like wayward parcels because, that seemed to be the direction we were going back to because again, I couldn't get in touch. I'm working with the mayor to get a meeting so that she could introduce the parks director to everyone, kind of not a like, hey, you're ghosting me, I'm gonna get the mayor involved, but more of a like, hey, not everyone knows you, so that I can get his ear and kind of,
Yeah.
pull him in. Working on that. But in the meantime, I'm not, even if we do get that opportunity, if he doesn't want to collaborate with us,
Right.
it's difficult.
Right.
It's maybe a long-term thing. So looking at some of these smaller parcels, I did identify a few and it was really interesting to find some of them. So can everyone see this, my screen?
Mhm.
I'll start with this parcel here. This is on, wait, I don't even know where I am, do I? Absolutely not. Okay, here we are.
Get my thing to come back on here.
I close this off. Yeah. Close that off. And
That is
and on
interesting.
Dante.
Yeah.
So
I
wouldn't
wouldn't have known what to do if that happened.
Jeez.
Why does it happen?
so wouldn't you know, owned by the city.
Really?
A lot of these small parcels, they have like all kinds of encroachment things and none of them are like a slam dunk. So we'll just explore them all.
Okay, so
Uh,
where is this one?
Pearl? Is that-
Pearl. So
Pearl,
this is
Maine.
this one is where the UPS store is.
Oh, UPS.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know where the UPS.
You,
What are
where-
the streets? Do you know? Tell me the.
Yeah,
streets.
Pearl. This is
Oh, okay. So
You know where
this, so if you,
like a vape shop there and there's the gun store is like right here. I
Okay.
think,
Yeah.
Or the restaurant.
so that's Main Street,
Yes, this Main Street.
and then we're not seeing Prospect Street off the map to the.
Right,
So it's
Prospect
on
is
the
up
way to
here.
Prospect Street. Okay, okay, I know where we are. Okay.
So this right here, it's 0.12 acres. There's this parking lot that now occupies, this is an old storefront, and these people are kind of occupying the site. But, I didn't I didn't make copies of this, but I will share this with you. I'll let you pass it down.
That is crazy.
This
Look
is
at
what
the
it looks
encroachment.
like. Oh, yeah, well, that's all over. So that's what it looks like. It's already got a ton of trees there. You could cut a bunch of trees down and re-establish something. It's kind of a
It's
cool.
so awesome to turn their driveway into a food forest.
It's kind of a cool location, right? But do we want to enter into an antagonistic relationship with the neighbor by bringing in
Must get great sun.
food insecure people into
Yeah.
what they perceive as their property?
Is that residential? It looks like a business.
This
kinda-
is a business next to it. Yeah, it's a business here that's not being used, and then there's a house on the same lot.
I
Um,
cannot get over the driveway. That's so, how do you get a permit for that?
Well, you don't need a permit for it.
You don't need a permit to do a driveway?
Well, the curb cut already existed,
Oh,
you know, they just creeped. They're still creeping.
Mm.
No one stopped them.
okay.
So that's where they're at, but it would be an amazing
That's a
location.
great
People could be
location.
waiting for the light, grabbing apples. You know, there's a lot of trees to clear, right? There would have to be a lot of management, so you'd be taking out their screen too. They may
Yeah.
be very,
Well, you could probably keep a screen. Maybe you'd
Yeah.
want a screen
yeah,
of something. It might not be these trees. Maybe it's like cedars.
but maybe, yeah, maybe the whole thing
Arborvitae.
could be a screen. Maybe it could just be, you know, we had the whole thing about food forests, like the self-sustaining thing. They're really complicated.
Yeah,
I love the idea, but I just feel like practically just having fruit trees in town that are easy to maintain
right.
is just easier than trying to like get this like garden essentially.
Right.
And that would be a good opportunity for that if you took out some of the landscaping and put in like a pear, like a peach tree, apple tree, blueberries, or like, you know, just things, and then advertised it as being edible landscaping.
Yep.
That's one site. The other site, I know this isn't gonna work, but these are all of the little fragments that we have. This one. So this is Willow Street. This is the Rite Aid. Oh, this is the Rite Aid. That's now not in business. This is a automobile, right? And then this is, what is that called again? Patco, right? Wall
What is it?
Street. Patco
Yeah, well, okay.
is right here.
Right,
Okay.
and then
Well, that
OMG.
intersection, right? Wall Street's there. And then, so you go down Willow Street and right across from whatever what is this called again? The affordable housing. There's this little strip here.
I can't see it. Oh, Little Strip. Okay, that's a good location too.
It is. It's mostly a swale. So I think it's kind of the you know, the road department probably like it's kind of a stormwater feature,
Yep.
kind of a natural little swale in there, but there'd have to be trees cleared to really get.
Oh, happened to me.
But, that's
So
that.
what do? You say
None of these are like
I just closed it.
slam
Oh, I
dunk.
closed it that way as well.
with the X?
Well-
Yep. And then you just open this up
I just
again?
Clicked on it again.
All right.
Yeah. Do we have to test these properties at all? Just that neighborhood had problems in the past.
Well, remember, yeah, when she
Like
came in, if
soil
there's any
testing?
contamination, it's kind of, you know, could be a non-starter if there was like, you know, contaminated soil with the plants.
Because that's kind of around the corner from Franklin. Which
Yes.
had a gas station that got contaminated during the flood. Things like that in that neighborhood. So I don't know if it extends out. Yeah, that.
It's a good point. I mean, we'd have to figure out what level we wanted, how we would fund soil testing. Maybe the city would be willing to do that.
How much of what's in the soil ends up in a food source?
I don't know. I wouldn't,
I mean, like, do we know that? I thought that certain plants cleaned it up somehow.
I don't
they
know how
do.
much is I don't know what and how much is transmitted.
Conservation District would be able to answer those questions.
Well, and that's what she was saying, that they
Yeah.
wouldn't support a project if it had contamination for that
Yeah.
reason.
Whereas Ford Motor Company was cleaning up a lot of their old manufacturing facilities by planting, but they were harvesting, certain grasses, and they
Yeah.
would say they had a plan where they do it often enough and they turn the soil that it would like decontaminate it. over a
Yeah,
period of time.
what happens with the plant, like Jimson weed is supposed to, thornapple, Datra, supposed to clean up toxic waste. And you end up
Even
seeing it.
sunflowers,
really?
Yeah.
You end up seeing it but my question is like, do you then harvest the plants and like, like, are the
Are they
plants
toxic?
themselves contaminated or what do they transform things into? How does that work? But
So that was that one. This one is maybe my favorite of this bunch. So this is Scoville. Right? I don't know if you're familiar with this I'm gonna go to the senior center, senior center,
okay,
right?
Oh, wait, Scoville, that's where my mechanic is.
Yep, I know that mechanic. Yeah, so this is the Naugatuck Valley
Yep.
Greenway Trail, right? And it goes past the senior center. It's on city kind of flood management. It crosses over here. It goes down Scoville, which has been redesigned as a complete street to have this become a one-way, and now it's a bike path for the Naugatuck
I saw that.
River
when I was
Greenway.
driving.
the transportation planner approves. Our engineer. And then it comes out to, there's a crossing here. And then it's gonna ultimately end up down at Toro Park. And to the, and out of town really, to the Harwinton line. But there is a piece right here of city-owned land.
And it has no trees on it. Those are just shadows.
Oh, yeah.
Has this. So it's a small strip, right? It's like a strip, but it is kind of a okay spot. It's on the north side of those trees, which is not
Okay.
ideal.
Setback.
Um,
That was the one you just looked at.
so it probably gets pretty shady.
The trees are on private property?
Correct.
Yeah, that's the
This is-
first one, yeah.
That's the first one.
That's an empty lot though, huh?
Yeah. And then the rest is all city-owned, flood management property.
That's a good
that
one.
It is.
That doesn't need much.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't know what the shade situation is because it's like those trees are tall and it's just north of them. I
Yeah,
mean, there's some, there's openness on both sides, so maybe it gets enough.
right.
It is right next to the river. So if there was contamination, I don't know what, like during the floods or whatever.
Mm.
I feel like that was all burned up and manipulated after the flood of 55 because it's part of the levee there.
Right.
But I don't know what the quality of any of that is, if that's
Yeah.
important. But that's I like that one.
That one looks like it's the easiest.
Yeah.
Like it's not gonna tick anybody off.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the last one I had, which yeah, is this one.
That's a nice.
Uh,
Okay, so what is that encroachment in the center with the four?
we have to get to that eventually, right? This is Park Ave, so the senior center's up here. So we're talking going down
Yeah,
away from the senior center south. And then, yeah, there's an encroachment. There's like a little table there. It looks like some gardening stuff.
what is this thing closer to the water course?
Fire pit?
That's what, this thing?
Yeah,
I
what's
think
that
tables
thing?
and chairs. I don't know.
It's a patio.
Yeah.
Well, how nice.
Well, these
That's for
houses are,
waterfront, dining.
yeah,
Okay,
Right.
well, they can keep
So-
that there around our food forest.
That'll be a future encroachment
Yeah.
thing for the open space investigation, but you'll see the picture. It looks a lot, looks a little bit more inviting than it is when you look at it from the street. It's all treed. There's no leaf cover on now, but it's all,
Right, Right.
You're not gonna get much light in there. Could be a little pocket one, right? Like this area right over here, maybe by the guardrail. It's not a sightline issue, which is nice.
what's the property to the left of that?
This one
Is
to the
that
south.
another open space? No, going.
Oh, yeah, that's also open space.
Yeah,
These two little
Wow.
buffers.
okay.
This one is privately owned.
Yeah.
They should donate it.
So how would people access this?
well, there's a sidewalk I see right there, but it sort of ends a little bit.
They'd have to hop the guardrail or the tree would have to extend over the sidewalk if it was like a.
Which, I mean, that's where it
Single
actually
apple
looks like
tree.
there's some
Yeah.
space. I mean, that would probably be doable to actually just kind of do it along the guardrail.
Yeah, like a little micro one.
They
Yeah.
don't need to have any off-road parking?
It's not my regulation, but yeah, no, it's,
No, but it's a low
it's
traffic
free. There's
area.
not a commercial transaction involved. You guys are just trying to shake us down for your farm products.
But is that Park Avenue? Is that the road?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
I
what,
mean, look
so
at, I mean, it
It's a
really
real
does have good
low-traffic
trees.
area, so you could park right
That's this
there.
one.
That's right there.
well, and the hope is it's not necessarily that we're looking for people to park, right? It's like,
I mean, the only,
local
like, you
people
could
could-
just
Yeah.
like a little.
Talk to it, right?
So what if we considered several small micro?
What was the one? This one on Scoville? That was the
that was on Palmer Bridge,
Palmer Bridge?
the one that's like next to this one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
to me, that looks like our best bet at the moment.
We could take a visit out there too.
Okay.
yeah.
And I mean, again, it looks like Public Works probably maybe has plans for it. I don't know what, if we're interested in it, I would follow up with Public Works to see, if they need to use it, if there are sightline issues. Just kind of following up with them, because I think that it would be, it's not like a conservation piece of property. It's a fragment that
Right.
they they're right now, I think that this was taken, well, who knows what, they're installing culverts there? Is that what that is? Or like, sanitary, not sanitary, some kind of
It's like
sewer.
a gas line
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah, yeah, some kind of, there's the equipment
Pipe.
there.
Kind of pipe.
But anyways, they probably use it for staging and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
we would just want to, get their blessing and then, bring it before council to, let them know. And hopefully it would be a quick, like, yeah, that's a
Okay.
great idea. But first step would be to have a site visit. I don't know whenever you'd want to do that.
Do we have our next walk already on the calendar?
Nope, that would be one of the things we have to do.
Yeah, maybe we just throw that in at the same time because be a pretty easy walkthrough.
We can do that.
Yeah, so maybe we put two of those properties on the,
Okay.
just, they're right around the corner from each other.
Right, this one and that other one. Pretty close.
Yeah, that would be Palmer Bridge and Park Ave.
Yeah. Because were they redesigning the sidewalks there? I think they had changed one of the roads to one way or something like that.
That was to accommodate the rail trail.
Yeah,
And how great, it's just so cool that it would be integrated into the trail planning, right?
like that,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
you're, promoting people using the trail to
Yeah.
access something more
Definitely.
basic, so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're biking down it, they want to get an apple, they're hungry. Oh,
Yeah.
It's free and there's signage telling me that it's a food
Where
for.
we can eat, yeah.
it's a nice walk.
So my dad used to have apple trees and he would have to spray them for bugs.
Yeah,
Otherwise, the apples get all like gnarly and full of bugs and fall off and really not much you could do with them. So does it depend on the variety of apple? Like,
it does.
You
I
guys
mean,
have
they
experience
do,
with
they
the
do
vehicle?
have like disease resistant cultivars that they're like, you don't have to spray them really, or.
really?
I have something that just, I mean, this is the first year it really produced a bunch of fruit. Like I've had this apple tree for I don't know how many years. And I'd get 3 apples on it. I mean, it's small, but this year it's loaded.
And they're,
There's not a single bug mark on it and I haven't sprayed anything.
and you know,
I don't know.
my cousin who lives on Winthrop Street where my grandparents used to live,
Good.
have,
We don't spray either.
they have a pear tree and they never have problems with the bugs, but, always we had the bugs if my dad didn't spray
The
them.
other thing is, it's a Korean method where you take some kind of plant matter. I mean, like, it doesn't even matter what it is. Take some kind of plant matter out of your garden, you ferment it and you make this, it's like this, I don't know, it's like this fermented plant sludge. It lasts forever. And you put like it's like a 1/4 teaspoon per gallon for spraying like
So like
any
an
kind of
organic
issue that you
type
have
of
in your garden. Like,
Compost.
it's like, it's not compost tea,
Mhm.
it's a ferment. And I have a friend who's been using it and it's like, it's legit. I was like, oh, come on. I think you're basically like just kind of juicing the plant and then like the natural yeasts or bacteria that are already on it. And you just like put it in this place and you let it ferment. And once it stops bubbling, it's ready for use and it's stable, doesn't really change. And just using small amounts, anything in the garden, the fruit trees, anything that has bugs or like spots or disease, you spray it and it seems to work.
So just something
But
you have
it's
to
a,
think
it's
about
something-
when you get to that
With
stage.
the permaculture stuff, they want, the idea is to get something that doesn't require any input
Right.
really once it's established, so.
so is that part of what the guild is that there are plants in there that are like insect?
It's like IPM, like
Yeah.
integrated pest
Yeah.
management with it, right? But you still have to invest a lot to weed and, be great. I mean, that's why the fruit tree thing, if you can get it so that it's something that's pretty hardy and
Yeah,
producing, and they're willing to mow around it during their regular maintenance, and that's a whole nother,
that's the other thing is like when it's a little guy,
or they,
not having it just,
Or-
yeah.
yeah. So, but the first step, we can do that site visit and I'll try to work out another open space thing nearby. Well, we can do the other one on Park Ave, and maybe I'll throw in one little other piece just to, you do 3 if they're close by.
Okay.
Um,
All right, so let's move on to,
Did you want to schedule it or?
oh, well, are we gonna schedule our site? I figured we could schedule everything at the open, we can do it now. We'll just schedule for open space and this. All right, let's do that. My calendar. So for the month of September,
How's the 13th look? 13th, 20th? So we like Wednesdays?
I mean, Wednesdays work for me. I know they work for you. They work for Nate. Do they work for anybody else?
Wednesdays are usually all right for me.
Okay.
In my- Able to make that work.
I mean, 13th is fine for me. Do you have anything, Nate?
No, that works for me.
Well, what's a good time? 10? 9?
9 or 10 is, I would prefer like 9:30 as opposed to 10, to have it done by noon.
9:30 works for me.
Yeah, if I'm gonna
9:30?
take off from work, I'd rather,
Earlier.
Right, you
Earlier,
don't want to
so
split your
what-
day in half.
yeah.
What's our meeting location?
Um,
We don't have an official meeting location. We
yeah, I
have to-
can kind of,
You want to meet at
can I
the
figure
senior
out the
center?
Yeah, that'd be
senior
nice.
center? Okay, let's do that.
Okay, so
So I haven't gone on one of these, so how should I be
you want to
prepared?
wear something that protects you from poison ivy first and foremost.
Yep.
Your ankles and, so I mean, basically, you're gonna wear a shoe that's comfortable for you.
That might
Maybe
get wet.
possibly waterproof.
Yeah.
And then the biggest thing for me, like I'm a minimal shoe person, my stuff's never waterproof, I just get wet, but having my ankles bare and poison ivy is the big thing, it might be bushwhacking through.
Bring garbage bags and picker uppers.
Or if you have if Steve brings the garbage bags,
You mean those, I have one of those, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
and we bought some for the next cleanup, by the way.
Did you?
So we have
Oh, good.
15 now or something.
Is that the official name of those picker uppers?
yes.
Yeah.
We need to, are they labeled as ours? Because I
Yes,
think
I labeled them today. I
okay,
highlighted like City Hall, Land Use Department, like
okay.
bring them here if you get them.
Do you email like the day before? as a
Yeah.
reminder?
Went out.
Little thing
Yeah.
that says like,
Things we're
you
doing.
should just make it up, but just put like tracker number 219. Tracker number.
Explodes it get away when it leaves its
Some
master.
people think that there's that it will be found. Okay, conservation site walk. At 9:30. Takes me a little while, sorry, people. Okay, we can move on to Red Mountain Trail update.
No real updates with that other than our the trash cleanup day, and we scheduled our internal kickoff meeting for the kind of technical advisory group, which is myself, Rista, who's now economic development, but our trail person, Paul Kunzens, our city engineer, and I think Dustin Baldus, our traffic police, is also on that. We're gonna start that meeting, and then we have to get together kind of other community advisory and, get rolling on that. But it's a state grant, so it's a little easier to work in. We can use our own consultants and all that. So
Okay.
we're moving on it.
Okay. Solar discussion.
I don't have any updates, but you had an abundance of information you
I-
shared with. the
Yeah, I
team.
sent that out to everyone. Did everyone read it? I'm sorry, I didn't. Okay,
And my caveat was, it didn't come up in a meeting, but the neighborhood that was getting together to appeal or kind of, going to wanted that intervener status, they were appealing to DEEP, not to the state siting council, because I think we were guessing if this, everything with the siting council was done.
Yeah.
And that's why this group was now going to DEEP to get their questions about water runoff.
yeah, so they're
Things like
not
that.
looking for intervener status anymore. I believe the siting council is over and now the project's being reviewed by DEEP. And the document that sent me is basically a lawsuit. See that
Really?
as a lawsuit? They're not looking for intervener. They're trying to, I mean, it looked to me
Well,
like they were,
They had we discussed on the list of issues that they had there, right?
yeah,
It
but the
was
list
water
of, so one
runoff
of the
and-
things that I've noticed about that is they've been using the same environmental scientist since, and that particular environmental scientist was what do they call him? He was an interested party. So he already had interested party status and he testified for the siting council in the beginning of the process years ago. And
I
he's been
think-
used by groups,
Oh.
but the information, I went through all of the stuff, his information hasn't changed. Like I did not, he said it's updated, but I don't, I mean, to me, I was like, is he just making money off of all of these people? Because nothing, I mean, like they are responding to him in their revising of the plans, they're responding to his criticisms. In, you know, like they were responsive. And then, like the citizens groups have all like hired him and then he just submits the same report
Hmm.
for it again. So I don't know what's
His
going on.
background, I had believed that he was actually on a state siting council not too long ago.
Well, that may be, but he was a party to this particular project.
Hmm.
Like if you look back, I looked back at, you know, the different petitions and it says who was made a party. So when people are notified, you can go in and say, I'm an interested party. Or I'm an expert and I have information. And he did that and he testified in the beginning. So they have all the information. They had it. And then if you look at the documents, they responded to it. So like I don't like I'm not seeing anything new in his reports when they're coming as a attachment or an affidavit to a complaint where they're trying to get intervener status. So I think that with anything with the siting council and having intervener status, that ship has sailed. It's over. Like it's way too late.
Hmm.
And I don't even think it's in front of the siting council anymore. Now it's being reviewed by DEEP. The fill that you were talking about, just to get everybody apprised. The how much it was 35,000 cubic yards of material that were going to be leaving the site. So that, you know, got everybody upset. So I was looking for that and I started in any of the documentation in 2023, back to 2022, and I found it in 2021, but it was in the original stuff too. I went all the way back. And all it is they have a 19 acre, somewhere between 19 and 23 acre portion of the property that requires grading. And the cuts are going to be 50 something thousand, 56,000 cubic yards of cut. And the fill, they need 21,000 cubic yards of cut. And
What,
so
what
it's
do you mean
just,
by cut?
I mean, fill, sorry, fill. So if you have a slope and the slope is too steep, you can't do anything with it. You just slide right down,
Yeah.
major erosion problems. So you will cut the slope off, you take some soil off the top and you put it on the bottom and you end up with a different slope. So you have cuts and fills. So there's calculations to create those cuts and fills and they know that they need certain amount of material cut and a certain amount filled and they need more cut than fill. That's subsoil. That's not topsoil. All of the farmland soils are going to be, in the plans, there's a place for the farmland soils to be housed as they're doing construction so that they are not,
So they set that
destroy.
aside.
they set the farmland soils aside. And that's in all the plans. And then the cut and the fill is like, that's all done with like it's not the topsoil, it's the subsoil.
Mhm.
So they'll have to clear trees. They're gonna be pulling out the topsoil, cutting the other stuff and using some of it to fill and then trucking away anything else. And they just, all it says, like, so the way you were describing it is, you know, when I was thinking about it, I'm like, all right, I'm looking for, because there's nothing that explicitly says we're gonna be removing 35,000 cubic yards of material from this. It's just a simple statement of this is the cuts that are needed, this is the fill that's needed, and anything remaining will be removed.
Excess, yeah.
Yeah, any excess is gonna be removed from the
Mm,
site.
mm.
So that's some attorney looking at it and being like,
Yeah.
look at all, you know, like,
Because
like
part of
creating
the
some
protest
hyperbole.
though was that the houses downstream or downslope from there were complaining about, they're concerned about their water runoff and the steepness of the grade.
Mhm.
But you're telling me that it's being addressed, but they were protesting.
It's being addressed. I know that they
Safety.
have to change the grade, whether that's the same area that's a problem for somebody
Because
downhill. is
their
not,
protests all along were, it's the grade that they're concerned with.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, my question is why did the neighbors, like, the other thing was that I saw the letters that went out to everybody. It had specific instructions for, like, all you have to do is be a neighbor and put in the application. Like, you just have to be, next to the property and put in this application to be an interested party. And then you were able to be a part of all of the hearings and ask questions. And if you want, present materials. But none of the people who
Hmm.
are now up in arms did that. There was
Yeah.
one person, one neighbor who did. And, he had nothing to present. He just sat in,
oh,
and he
was
didn't.
he in Litchfield? Is that the Litchfield guy?
I don't know. I don't remember. It was a month ago that I was doing all the research, but they like waited over a year. Wasn't like, they basically started to submit that stuff after the deadline.
Yeah,
So I don't know what's up with that. But, one of those parties hired a Hartford attorney, and that's who wrote the thing that you showed me that's going to DEEP. And, as a wetland, on the Wetlands Commission, we've had people hire attorneys and, and fight us on like retaining walls and things like that. We basically just we refer it to Corporation Counsel and let Corporation Counsel tell us what our next steps are, and we go about our business.
yeah.
Like,
But
that's-
from what you could see, you think that they're complying with the existing rules?
I'm no expert on it, but not everything seemed to me to be like, nothing was done backwards. They did all their planning. They had, the counts for the different species, like they knew what types of species that might be at risk would likely be on this property, and then it was like a 4-year search to find evidence of whether they were or not. Like, there's nothing to me that seemed like it was slapdash.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, that I was really trying, I couldn't see the plans, because like one of the things that environmental scientist, there were a few things they had said that were funny to, I mean, they were awful, they were funny, like, like that the panels had not been considered in the original plan as impervious surfaces, and, like, there were certain mistakes that engineering had made. Now, mistakes are inevitable, like it just happens, and then they get caught and they get fixed. Like, it's not a reason, like, because there's a mistake in these, ginormous plans, does not mean that the developer's unfit to go ahead with their plans. They just have to fix it. So, it's really great when you have somebody who's going to point out your mistakes, because it's an opportunity to fix them. So I was trying to look and see if I could, on the stormwater management plan, if I could see that. And that was where many of the mistakes that he was talking about were there. But I have a 13-inch computer screen. These plans are huge,
Mhm.
and I could not really look at them well, the equipment that I had. But I mean, I would have been interested to have seen that and then what the change was, but.
Well, and a point I also brought up too, like at this point, if we've passed that period, as the municipality, we can ask to join deep on their regular inspections and be apprised. They have a third-party monitor that they're hiring to do the monitoring work for the site. We can make sure that we're involved and understand what's going on.
Get the reports.
Because I know from my experience, you do the plans, they all look great or whatever, and you're like.
There's always
eh.
problems.
And then there's always problems in the implementation. And so it's more like catching those and making sure that they're sticking to the plan that everyone's agreed is a reasonable thing rather than just letting it go on and then have problems happen and no one catch them.
So
So
something like this, like if you're building a building, then the building inspector people come at different stages of construction and inspect it, but something like this, who will be ensuring that what's on the plan is what is gonna be built?
Well, Deepwood, but would you naturally be included?
The conservation district is, I spoke to them.
So during constructions, they will.
they're required, the applicant, it's my understanding that the applicant is required to hire a third-party monitoring firm.
Yep.
Consultant to do the monitoring and report back regularly to Deep, and they have a pretty, they spell out the
Seemed to me
monitoring
like they had a
schedule.
number of things that had to be monitored as well. They were monitoring the welfare of the different species that they identified as being species of interest. They had to like hire a herpetologist. That's part of the plan to monitor these wood turtles that are on.
I had a friend who was a turtle monitor for one of these organizations, and he's like, never saw a turtle, but I have to walk around the site and like look for the turtle, like,
Daily turtle sweep.
yeah,
How
exactly.
do I get that, Jen?
What?
How do I get?
Yeah.
It's not that fun. You did not
Wish
like
I
it.
got to see a
But-
turtle.
Nate, will Deep naturally include you in that? Or
After it's-
would you
it's like
do
after it's done,
walk-alongs or?
right?
Yeah, I can, Jeremy said that he thought that there was an avenue to be able to work, to ask, basically we can ask to have site visits, and they can, I guess they could deny us, but it's
But what's the point of?
not in their interest to do that, and so they would more likely than not be like, coordinate with our consultant and, take a tour of the site. I mean, we couldn't do it weekly or whatever, but we could be, you can see a lot by just getting in there in a snapshot of time and asking questions.
Yeah,
So,
I thought things were really thorough. Like there's a little building that for maintenance and for some of the infrastructure for storing the electricity and transforming it, I guess, and it needs to have certain power equipment that's gas powered. And so they have like a whole protocol in place if any little pit spills in the usage, and I don't know, I thought I was reading all of the stuff and I was just like, wow, this is pretty darn, very thorough,
Hmm.
very well done, in my opinion. But I'm not an expert. I've just been around similar stuff for many, many years.
and at the end of the day, I think Christine was saying this before, none of us want to see farmlands get developed,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, they have the right to, it's their property and they have the right to develop it.
Right, plus
So
from
they
the
they
other
can be
thing
regulated though.
is that they
Wait,
can't do it, they can't use farmland or forest.
Oh, the new one,
Yeah,
well,
it's
I think it
protected.
has to be is it completely excluded or it has to go into the analysis and they have to like,
I thought it was excluded.
Yeah.
was it? I don't even remember when
I don't think you can make this kind of solar farm the way they're
yeah.
designed.
It was basically something designed to protect farmland
Or-
from these
and-
things.
and
Yeah, I mean,
forest.
just, what do you do if all
Yeah.
of the
Here's,
farmland gets
uh,
bought up for?
I think Connecticut was like 6 or 8 months behind on passing rules. They got in and they changed ownership like 3 times. It was an odd story, but essentially they're grandfathered into.
Yeah,
get
this particular
design.
property, just, it wasn't really grandfathered in. It was just that the application came in about a month before. The law was,
Really?
yeah, I
One-
mean, it wasn't very long. It was like,
I thought it was within the same year.
was it? I don't know. It was like, wow, that squeaked by. So, but again, my memories, I could have made it all up. I don't know. I thought it was like really close. Okay. So
Well, thank you for looking into that.
you're welcome. All right, so now we are at our open space inventory. You're gonna pick some stuff and schedule it for us?
Yeah, I'll do that and we'll use that date. Understanding that we want to kind of wrap up. With your permission, I would move earlier after we're done with the World Cleanup Day. I put all of the open space encroachments into an Excel spreadsheet with descriptions of all of them
Yeah.
by property, and I would, I wanted to kind of talk through with you and try to come up with a prioritization for enforcement because there's just so much that I I kind of want to figure out a way.
You want to just take one meeting to do that? You want to do it in chunks? Like how do we?
I think if we scheduled it in a slower time earlier in the agenda, I don't have to take too long. It's just, it always falls at the end. I've been wanting
Okay.
to include it, but it's always like at the end and it's
All right.
a whole
so
nother
next
can
meeting,
open.
Shall we put that as new business, like outside of open space inventory? We'll just say the encroachment policy.
Yeah, because really, we only had a couple bad ones where you built outbuildings on the space, right?
Well, that's what we've seen. There's others that have been inventoried prior years that probably.
Yeah,
Oh.
and I mean, it's just as a basic, right? Like you could prioritize it by the encroachment type, or the value of the open space, right? Like if someone's mowing an acre as their lawn, that could be an acre of shrubland or meadow or something like that instead. Do we go after those people? There's kind of like, we could look at some examples and try to figure out something.
Would we want to send like a warning? I don't even mean like a violation letter, but would we want to just like send a letter out saying, so the city of Torrington has completed its open space inventory, and one of our priorities was to identify encroachments on city property, and your property was identified as having some encroachments. Expect to be hearing from us. Or
I mean, we could do that. I've been just following up. So before I started, I was like, I need to prioritize. I would go out and I would see some things and I would just go after if I had a moment in the day,
Yeah.
and kind of willy-nilly. I did about 6 of them and I got compliance on every single one.
you got what?
Compliance. Like people are like,
Yeah, if you call them out on it, right?
they immediately jump if they're like, you're on city property, get off.
Yep.
I don't say it meanly. I'm not a mean person.
Right.
I show up. I don't give them an unreasonable timeline.
But
I say,
what were the violations? Was it a wood pile or brush pile or was it?
no, we're talking like hardscaping patio area into, the Army Corps flood management area,
Oh.
or a shed on the.
I mean, I'd do it, wouldn't you?
Or like a
Some people don't even know.
You
where
don't
their
really know.
property
You're
line
like, man,
is.
this is a great piece of
Yeah.
property. Who's using it?
And I don't try to be punitive with anyone
Yeah,
for
yeah.
zoning or wetlands or anything. So it's just more like,
It's just matter
on
of
this,
fact. These are the
this is what it
facts.
is. It needs to be gone.
Yeah.
They call, they're usually very sorry. Is there any way I can keep it? Unfortunately, no, there's
Yeah.
not. Okay. But rather than me just going after everyone blanket, I just I have a list of maybe 30 right now so just,
So you
nice to kind of prioritize those so I can just do it when I have a moment and hit the most important ones rather than doing all the little ones too.
my mother was involved in a deal with a property that's like diagonal from where I am. And it's backed right up against Route 8, and it has a triangular piece of land that is owned by the state. But there was it's like that triangular piece of land is outside of the fence, the state has around highways, and the owner called and asked if he could mow it. Got permission. Just mow it and use it, but he wouldn't put anything on it. He got permission for something like that. So it extended his practical, yard, but state knows he's doing it and he knows it's not his.
There's some places that make sense, like
Yeah.
around a catch basin. There's one area that was would be actually pretty good access to the catch basin for maintenance and stuff like that, where maybe the commission doesn't care. So just we can have that bigger conversation and look at some examples and
Yeah.
I can get an idea of where your priorities are at, so I can come up with a policy that I can kind of go after what your
Yeah.
priorities are
Yeah.
first.
I feel like, yeah, that's true. I just kind of feel like if there's an encroachment, even if it's a minor encroachment and we really don't care, I just kind of feel like people should be notified that we know that there's just just a notification that we know that there's an encroachment and that we're assessing the impact of the encroachment.
Right, and maybe that's something
And-
that we
right.
get to
Yeah.
on the priority list, but but it's.
And it could just end up being like a form letter that we create that ends up going out at some point.
That's easy
You know.
enough.
Right. Okay.
So when you do these open space inventories, is that specifically what you're looking for as any encroachment, or there's other?
Yeah.
You have like a
yeah.
Looking for the value of the land, value of the open space. Do we want to keep it? Someone want to keep? Do we see future uses for it? Okay. Does it have any potential? Like, is it abutting any other public property? Could it be, is there something next to it that we might want to acquire? Like all of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we can go over that too. I can bring up because I'm pulling it out of the master sheet from the open space inventories because that's where we're recording all the information. So we can look and kind of start to see what the fruits of the whole project are ending up with, because we're getting near the end.
So, yeah, just on those, I thought some of our walks were just beautiful
Yeah.
walks into these park-like areas and beautiful streams and waterfalls. And it is very nice, discoveries, right in some neighborhood backyards. Yeah, it's kind of cool. Well worth coming along. There's garbage pickup.
Okay, so we have our thing. Oh, so yeah, we're gonna put that assessment and new business for the next meeting, and then our last thing is the natural resources inventory. Anything new on that?
I'm just working away at it.
All right,
Very slow, very steady.
okay. So then the last order of business is we need a motion to adjourn.
I motion to adjourn.
In a second,
I'll second that.
okay?
I use the gavel.
No, you want me to use the gavel?
Yeah.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Well done.
When I first got on the commission,